Sadistic Penguin Studios presents the At the Show podcast with Tom Yumper Garcia.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
And Tony Chalsa Burt.
I don't know this industry jargon, YP, MP, whatever, okay? All I know is that I cannot get a record contract. We cannot get a record contract unless I take these tapes.
It's almost time, so grab a drink, get your popcorn ready, and join the film discussion with two guys from Chicago talking movies.
Start things off with our little GIF up there.
Get busy living or get busy dying.
Yes, sir. Welcome back to season 5 of the At the Show podcast, presented to you by Sadistic Penguin Studios. I'm one of your co-hosts, Tom Yumper Garcia, and my other co-host is Tony the Sugar Baggy Burt. How you doing, my man?
Doing really good. Glad to be back tonight.
I'm just reading Sam's comment. Oh, yeah. Hello, gents. Have a good show. I haven't seen Shawshank yet, so I don't want spoilers. Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Listen to our show after you watch the movie.
Please do.
Yeah, we got a packed show for you today. We're going to talk about one of our classic films. Actually, not just our classic film, an American classic, a film that's probably rated one of the highest rated films in modern history. I know it's number 2 in IMDb. I believe it's right behind The Godfather, and that is The Shawshank Redemption, my friend.
Which is really interesting because that was our first movie in season 4. So, and to be fair, I don't know. I may like this one more than The Godfather. I mean, this movie's a really tough. This is a really good movie. A real one to put against any movie that may beat it.
Yeah. Definitely. To be honest with you, it's a lot quicker watch. I think this film. Both films are equally long. I think The Godfather is 3 hours, and I think this film's like a little bit 2.5 hours, I believe. But both films are enjoyable. But this one, I think, flows a little better than The Godfather because The Godfather has so many moving parts in it with the different families going back and forth between time. And this one is more of a straight kind of, it doesn't have as many flashbacks, but it kind of has like a straight, forward story that keeps you engaged. It's one of those movies that was always playing on TNT that I constantly watched whenever it was on.
Big TNT movie, yes.
I know Paul Wes Anderson has said that this is one of the few films that he will stop and watch at any time.
Well, it's hard not to just admire so many different pieces in this movie, which we're going to get to here in a little while.
Yeah, man. But before we get into that, let's get into what we have been watching since our break, my friend.
Let's do it.
That's a meme. And also, what were you just watching?
So what have you been watching, my friend?
A gauntlet of so many different things. I don't know where to get started on this list. We'll get started at the very first one here, The Front Room. Just put on HBO this past week on Friday. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. I don't know if you've seen this movie yet, Yump. It was a really, really good time. It was like a cheesier Drag Me to Hell, which I love cheesy, and Brandy did a really great job. But this female character lead in this movie, which I'm going to get to here in a second, she does just really such a good job acting in this. And her name is Catherine Hunter. If you may not be familiar with her, but she's been in a few other movies. She's been in the Harry Potter film series. She just puts on she reminds me of the lady in Drag Me to Hell, but she just really honestly is a nuisance onto Brandy, who is her daughter-in-law, her stepdaughter-in-law, because her stepson-in-law, she's coming to stay with them. And it becomes just a really, really, really ridiculous bad situation. But I suggest you should check that out because it was a good time. And they label it as horror. But if you've ever seen Ma, I like that movie a lot with Olivia Spencer. it's kind of like that, where it's not really scary, but you laugh at some of the things that are happening. I like that kind of horror. That's some of my favorite too. It doesn't have to necessarily scare me as long as I'm interested, and this one kept me interested. We'll move on to the last one there in the picture, Borderlands. I picked up my Stars subscription because I love to watch Power. And I saw Borderlands was on there, and me and you brought it up and said that it looked awful. It had to be terrible. And I said, you know what? I'm going to save you some heartache because I see next month The Crow's going to be on there. So I will throw in my 2 cents on that soon. But on this movie, let me just say this. I have never played the video game. I know nothing about it. I went into watching this movie like I just watched a movie. It to me, and this is just me, I did not hate this movie as much as I hated Beetlejuice. But that's just me. It wasn't a great movie by any stretch or any means, but I got the point of what they were trying to do. I think if you are a fan of the video game, maybe it might not stick to some of that stuff. That could be a problem. I mean, the characters were interesting to say the least, but it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. Now, it could have been because, again, I watch things sometimes like, okay, well, I didn't really laugh at anything in this. It wasn't like The Front Room where I was like, this is a good cheesy action. It just was what it was, but it wasn't the worst. It sure the hell wasn't good, but I thought I'd let you know that, Jump. And my very last one here is lately me and my wife, when work has been down, work has been troubling us, she will send me this gift right here.
I don't even think you really know what a bad day is. But you're gonna find out. You hear me, man?
And it's on Netflix, and I had to pick up Netflix because Raw is on Netflix. Raw is one of my favorite things to watch. But I sat through Unhinged, and have you ever seen Unhinged?
No, I have not. But seeing an overweight Russell Crowe always makes me laugh.
Oh, and if you want to laugh, my God, was this a laugh riot? It was such I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, the movie starts with him going into a house and killing his wife and her lover with a hammer. That's just how the whole thing starts. And then from there, it pretty much is honestly like falling down on steroids. And he's just ridiculous. Because to me, I'm thinking about LA Confidential. I'm thinking about Gladiator. And I got, as you just stated, overweight Russell Crowe making threats that are ridiculous with a fat face. But if you're into ridiculous, no point stories with some laughs, it's on Netflix. But those are the 3 that I've watched, Jump. What you watched?
Well, first, I haven't seen Borderlands. Now, I was going to start it, but it was at 11 o'clock at night, and I saw it on there, and I'm like, maybe I should pop this in. And then I'm like, yeah, if it's really bad, I don't feel like getting upset.
No, I mean, I watched it at like 1 in the afternoon, so it may do you better to watch it earlier.
I don't know about the film. I just heard it hasn't done well. Friend of the show, Richard Roper, I asked him what he thought of it, and he told me that he didn't even get a screening. And he said when that happens, that means the movie's not that great.
I'm pretty sure, there's what's the word I'm looking for? I definitely can see that. But then again, I could see that probably, 4 of the 6 films on the screen probably didn't get screeners, but that's just something that I'm going to take a guess at. But go ahead. Yeah.
So for me, I've been really into an anime kick. One of my buddies that I talk to regularly at work, Christian, is really, really into Japanese anime, and I bit the bullet and bought Crunchyroll. So I subscribed to Crunchyroll for, I think I have like 14 days free. So just exploring a bunch of anime on there. One of the films I looked into was Akira. Now, growing up, I always remember these commercials coming on late at night to advertise for Akira, the Japanese sensation, to buy the film on VHS. It was made in 1988 by Koshiro Otomo. And it's one of those anime films that actually blew up, and it's basically in a desolate like future. You have these people, revolutionists versus the government, and they're trying to find what Akira. And I'm not going to spoil this for you because you can actually watch it on Crunchyroll for free if you want to see it. But the movie was actually really, really done well. I did watch the dub version, the English version. The voice acting was very, very good. And that's one of the things I don't like sometimes with anime, Japanese anime in particular. Sometimes the voice acting's a little bit too enthusiastic. I wouldn't say enthusiastic, but like overdone. It's over the top, especially in the girl voices. But this one was actually done very, very well in English. And I actually rewatched it in Japanese, and it was actually with the subtitles. It was actually really, really done well. It's one of those films, that coming of age films that came out and kind of put the anime like feature from Japan in the American audiences. Gave them a taste of what's going on there. It's nicely done. It still holds up today. You can tell it's aged a little bit in terms of the way the animations look, but it still looks really, really good. Have you seen Akira?
You being an ex-Cubs fan, do you remember that pitch that Sammy Sosa could never hit, the one that like came outside and he would swing and he would miss it every single time? That's my filmography with anime. That's the only thing that gets me every time. I've heard of Akira. I have not heard of the other movie that you picked, but I definitely interesting to want to dig into and start something new like this. So no, I don't know. I just know, honestly, of everything I've ever heard, Akira is the only thing that I really know, because in film categories, a lot of people, quote unquote, put it up there as one of the best, not only, but just an all around really good film. So I should actually sit down and watch it.
Check it out. I mean, it's always mentioned with Ghost in the Shell. That's another film that's, I know it got remade with Scarlett Johansson. We don't talk about that because it's a bad remake. But Ghost in the Shell is another film that was based off Japanese anime. But yeah, so after I watched Akira, I started watching. The reason I got Crunchyroll is because in 2023 they did a release of this show called Rurouni Kenshin, which is about a wandering samurai who fought during the Japanese Revolution in the 1800s. He was an assassin, but after the revolution, he decided to change his ways and become just a wandering swordsman who has a backblade, meaning that his sharp end's actually reversed, and he uses it to help people. He doesn't kill people. But this series has a bunch of blood in it, so it was something I really liked when I was younger. I found it on Toonami in the 90s, and it was made in the 90s. They did another release in the 2000s, and now they did a re-release, even with better graphics, updated voice all over, which I think is excellent both in English and Japanese, and it's just visually stunning. So they've been releasing new episodes every day. So I binged through that during our week off, and I'm waiting for a new one to come out next week. So I decided to go through the live action films. Now, I talked about Trust and Betrayal, which is based off of Rurouni Kenshin, and I did a video on it for Martial Arts Gems. Rurouni Kenshin, the beginning, is actually the live version of Trust and Betrayal, and it holds up very, very well. It was made in 2021, and it's actually a two-parter. It's this one, and then there's a new sequel that came out, part 2, which is a wholly different arc of the series. But this one's actually Trust and Betrayal live action. It holds up to the story, holds up to the manga. The sword fights in it are excellent. If you love like just Japanese samurai stuff, it's got all the action you want in terms of that. It has gore. It also has kind of like a love story in there that you find out why he has the 2 scars on his face. And it's free if you have Netflix. All 5 live films are free on Netflix. So I watched this one, and Tony, I know you're getting into anime and you're getting to, like, I really love this series. I mean, it's not for everyone, but I think you would like this kind, because we both kind of like Westerns, and I always think of Westerns as a way of, like, they're kind of based off the old samurai film.
I love Westerns, so I'll definitely that's a good bridge.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen it, check out Rurouni Kenshin. The live action films are on Netflix, and they're subtitled. I believe they have the English dubs as well. I watch them subtitled, but the actors do a great job. I think they won a bunch of awards for as well, a lot of Japanese awards equivalent to Oscars. But check them out. And to close out my third film, I watched a classic. I remember looking at a picture of Southside Zoe, he had posted, I think on Instagram, it was like him, and he has the back of his phone case is Commando
Ooh.
with the missile launcher, the rocket launcher. So I decided to pop in Commando, and man, did I forget how bad Dan Hedaya, his Mexican or Spanish accent or Cuban accent, whatever the hell he is in that movie. He is horrible as accents in that movie. But the movie is so good. It's so cheesy. It's Powerhouse Arnold. It's 80s galore. Action, fighting a bunch of bad guys, shooting them. Arnold with his one-liners, and some random airplane stewardess that just gets caught up in it, decides to help him for some reason, then magically knows how to fly a plane. But Commando is like a great film. I always thought the video game on NES was based off Commando, but it isn't. But I love me some Commando, man.
Commando's a great movie. Two lines that were pretty much set around like scripture in my house were, "Hey Sully, remember when I said I'd kill you last? I lied." And the next one, for some reason, a very obscure line, but it's when he's like, "Hey John, I'll be waiting, John," when he's like looking out the window at him when he like goes to walk away or whatever. Just some really good stuff in the movie. Of course, Alyssa Milano. I think I've seen this movie, like it's got to be the first Arnold movie I actually saw, because to me it was just so awesome, that beginning. Just as a kid watching it, but even now, the front cover of the movie is just, it screams awesome. This era of Arnold, it's hard to beat. I know on a past show there was it was a Arnold, we guys doing Arnold and Sly. I like Sly a lot, but I just don't know if you could top Arnold with like 4 or 5 of these movies in a row that he put out.
No, Arnold was always in my eyes. I love Sly. Always in my eyes. Arnold's
I love Cobra. I mean, I'll talk about Cobra for days, but
yeah, Arnold's always number 1, Sly's number 2, and then Van Damme.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But excellent movie. Honestly, for it being an action movie, and besides some of the cheesy day, I mean, the cinematography is cool in it. A lot of movies back then, I talk about it a lot. I don't know what's different in the camera work now. In some movies, action movies versus back then. I know it's digital, but it just looks really cool. Some of the panning on some of the bigger shots in the movie.
Yeah, and it also has the guy falling. That's like an 80s thing. The guy falling when he gets.
Oh yeah, the scream. Oh yeah, the Wilhelm scream. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it has that, and it's awesome. I mean, Arnold is the man. Like he was the big action star. And to be honest with you, my first Arnold movie wasn't Terminator. It wasn't this film. It was actually Red Sonja. Actually, saw him in.
That's a good one.
But a ballpark estimate, I don't know, he had to kill at least 80 people. And the funny thing is, they kill like the cops that the lady gets in the film. This is me going on, right? But the cops she gets to help her in the film, she ends up getting killed. Like Hercules in New York. Oh man, that's a horrible film, but I've seen that too.
Hercules.
We can do a deep dive into Arnold one of these days. Like it's gonna come to probably this season, the deep dive into Arnold's career.
Yes,
but,
I'd like that.
It's one of my favorites to throw on. Kindergarten Cop. That's another film. That's great. They used to watch this. There was this clip on YouTube where it's called "There Is No Bathroom," and it's just Arnold saying "There is no bathroom" and him doing this scream outside of the school while he's talking crap to the kids. I remember watching that. It was really funny.
You may be onto something for a next topic or something.
Yeah. But that's what we watched this week. Let us know what you watch over on the Twitters or X or whatever, unless it gets sold. Let us know what you've watched over at the show pod on those platforms, or at Lil Yumper or the Hookup on Music or the Sugar Baggy. Tone, before we get into our other stuff, let's talk a little bit about our guy Gordo and send him some love, man. Gordo had his surgery yesterday. We got an update from his sister via Dougie of the Chicago Sports Bums. Gordo is doing fine. He's resting up. I texted him today. I'm guessing he's still sleeping. off the meds. I know he was nervous about the surgery, but we're happy everything went well. Now it's time for recovery. We at the Statistic Penguin Studios and the at the show are big supporters of Gordo. He's a big supporter of us. You know that we have been selling a shirt for him, the Gummy Strong shirt, which is over at our website, statisticpenguinstudios.com. All you gotta do is click on that merch site, and it'll take you there. The reason I say this to get this soon to help Gordo with his bills is because the merch site's actually going to go away after this month. So all the proceeds that we get from the Gummy Strong shirt are going to Gordo. They've been going to Gordo, but we're going to actually close down the merch site because, to be honest, we don't get that many sales there. We got to come up with some new ideas. But the Gordo shirt has been selling, and we're trying to help him with our, his bills for medical bills. That is. So be sure to, if you have some extra change this month, head over to our website at statisticpenguinstudios.com and buy a Gummy Strong shirt in support of our guy, Gordo.
Heck yeah. I mean, definitely talk about bravery facing something like that. And just very glad that he came out on the other end. Gummy Strong.
Yes, sir. Gummy Strong for Gordo. So, Gordo, we're thinking about you, my man, and we know you're going to be around and being the Wonka of Lot B again when we see you this summer. Or sooner. I'll probably see you sooner, but, to rest up and get strong, my man. I just wanted to wish out our guy Gordo. Had to throw that in there, Tone. But before we get into our film, I have a couple quick questions because we know this is based off a Stephen King short story. This film is Shawshank Redemption. So I want to talk a little bit of Stephen King with you. What was the first book you ever read from Stephen King?
Well, I remember specifically downtown Lansing, Illinois. There was like this huge, it was like kind of like all the stores had all their stuff outside. There was a book store and it just had a bunch of books. And I remember like just seeing a bunch of Stephen King books. I mean, I was only like 10 or 11 and my mom for some reason bought like 6 of them. And I took them home and I still actually have them in the other room. But it would have to be The Shining would be the first book of his that I read. But I read a lot of his books though.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you said The Shining because I actually got into King a little later than most people do. I got into him actually in high school. My freshman year for our English class, we had to read The Shining.
Oh,
that was one of our courses for honors English. And once I read that book, I just fell in love with King. Also, where I found my love for Kurt Vonnegut was through there. But my mom had always been a fan of Stephen King. She had all the books. My second book I picked up was actually It. And I reread it maybe a couple years ago. It's an 800-page book. Still very, very good, except some parts are, you think about like, what the hell are you thinking? But since then, I've read Cujo and The Stand being my favorite from him. Yeah, King's always, he's can throw out the short stories or those long novels that keep you coming. I mean, my brother, did his whole thesis on King and Dean Koontz. Like those are his two guys.
I know you don't. Real quick, I know you don't like Family Guy that much, but there's this hilarious joke where Peter's driving and he runs someone over and he looks out the window and he goes, "Oh no, I hit Stephen King," and the guy goes, "Oh, he's like, I'm Dean Koontz," and then he runs him over again and keeps driving. Dean Koontz is always a little less than King, but still good author, great author.
Yeah, man. What about the first movie you saw?
Oh, this one is tough again. It's either going to be again. I mean, if you talk about seeing, I remember going over in like 6th grade to a friend's house, and I ended up coming back home because he wanted to go to bed at 9 at night. And I was like, "Mom, you got to come pick me up. This is bullshit. I need to come home. This is my only night to hang out." So she's like, "I'm going to bed." My dad was working. I put on The Shining. I didn't even make it through the credits. The credits scared me that much at like 11 that I didn't make it through. But besides that, I saw It when it aired. So I would think it was It was the first thing. Ironically, one of my very first tapes I had was the Maximum Overdrive soundtrack because it had AC/DC, Who Made Who. But King, it's crazy you bring it up because he is so many different things. Because one of my favorite movies, of course, is Stand By Me. So I love Misery. I mean, we could talk forever about Misery is another one. I mean, his work is so influential.
Yeah. So my first film actually of King I saw was Silver Bullet.
Ooh, that's
That's
right there too.
yeah, Richard Bachman, which is his pseudonym name. But I watched Silver Bullet, and then of course the next was probably Stand By Me, and then we had the box set of it.
I really wish I would have wrote some of this stuff down if I knew I was doing a podcast with you like 40, 30 years later. I could have this notebook of the days I first watched these movies. This was the movie I watched first because I'm actually curious because I was watching Silver Bullet at the same time too. It's hard to tell, really.
Yeah, Silver Bullet's one of my favorite films, and it is a very good film. I know a lot of people don't like it, which is surprising, but I guess I don't know. So I already gave you some of my favorites. Silver Bullet. What are some of your favorites?
Again, you brought up, I brought up Stand By Me. I like digging into some of us King's not horror work, as we're going to talk about tonight. Like The Green Mile, I thought was really good. I'm a huge fan. My father was a huge fan of The Mist. When that movie came out at the movie theater, saw it a couple times. That's a deep story. I mean, it's like I talk about this all the time on the Hookup on Music. It's always tough for me to nail down a favorite of anything because I like just so much. But I guess if you were to say what is my favorite, I would have to go with I think The Shining is one of the most amazing pieces of work of all time. So I'll go with The Shining or Misery. I actually played that quote from that for Katie earlier. So one of those two.
Those are good picks.
I mean, Misery, man, me and you, and you're going to look at me like I'm insane. But if somehow we didn't have families and we were in college, I could put that movie on 30 times in a row and we could study it because I love that movie that much. Like that movie is just so Kathy Bates and James Caan do such a good job. Meteor shit. That's again, there you go. Creep Show. Great, Stephen King. I mean, that's tough. Him bringing that up right there. I mean, I love Creep Show. Dolores Claiborne was one of my mom's favorites. Me, it was okay. But again, great movie. Great movie.
Okay, so what is one of your least favorites?
Ooh, a lot of those made for TV Stephen King ones, like Storm of the Century. Some of the more obscure ones. That like one that is just I got it. Oh, this is a good one. This one really went to the movie theater in college with my friends, read the book, talked it up. None of these guys read the book. Went and seen Dreamcatcher. Man, they were pissed, and so was I. Man, that movie was god awful. So I'll go Dreamcatcher.
Dreamcatcher, yeah, that's another one. But my least favorite is probably the Tommyknockers. I didn't enjoy the book. The only thing I liked about the Tommyknockers in the book was that it kind of had
The throw with Jimmy Smith. Is he into Tommyknockers?
yeah, it kind of has a tie-in with it, and a lot of his books do this. They have a tie-in within the Castle Rock universe, and they're driving and they look down on the sewer and they see the balloons down there, for the clown. But the film I didn't like. I didn't like the book. I think King doesn't excel very well when it comes to aliens. That's just me. His best alien movie was probably as Jody in Creepshow with the meteor shit. But I don't know. I just didn't like Tommyknockers. I didn't hit it well, and I love King stuff. I just didn't like it. It's my least. Lawnmower Man, dude. The Lawnmower Man. Pierce Brosnan in it, man.
Job. Jeff Fahey is Job.
Yeah. The Lawnmower.
I mean, there's so many. I mean, sometimes they come back. Not a great movie, but it's not terrible. It's a call where it's like Tommyknockers is bad though. You know what I mean? That one is, I will give it to you. That was one of the ones I said the TV ones, because what had happened was it was a successful TV one. He really, oh no, I'm sorry. I'm glad you've given me time. I mean, do I get to pick the other Shining? Do I get to pick the second Shining with Steven Weber, the one that was for ABC that Stephen King was like, this is the one that's just like my book, and it was god awful? Was it that one? I mean,
Yeah. But I will say this. I really enjoyed Dr. Sleep, the film.
Great movie.
And I really enjoyed the book. And I would say I usually say the book is better than the movie, and I would say Dr. Sleep is actually better.
Oh, Sleepwalk. That's a bad one too.
Sleepwalk, that's not a fucking weird movie. See, that one was I understand that movie at a young age, like the whole incest thing. And then like even watching it today, I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like King, man, when Stephen King was on drugs, that guy, he just let it rip. Like whatever came out of his mind. Like I know if you ask him about Cujo, he's not remember writing that book. He was on cocaine and alcohol when he wrote that book, and that's one of his best works, Cujo. The movie is very good too, but Sleepwalkers, like I don't know what he was thinking when he wrote that one. Maybe he was just trying to do something new.
App Pupil isn't great.
Yeah, but I didn't think App Pupil was bad compared to those other movies we mentioned.
No, but you know, it's kind of a weird movie.
Yeah, but let us know what movies you liked from Stephen King, what books you liked from Stephen King. He's one of the greatest. In my mind, he's the greatest horror author of all time, and probably one of the best mainstream novelists ever.
R.L. Stein. Did you forget R.L. Stein?
I love R.L. Stein, but he's not no Stephen. He isn't Stephen.
That was a
joke. Stephen King is still my number one GOAT, and I don't care what the J.K. Rowling fans say. Stephen King crushes you all. But that's kind of what we're getting into in terms of a Stephen King inspired film. It's actually from his, novella. And Tone, before I keep rambling on about this, let's just get straight into development of this great film.
Let's do it.
In my thoughts, I use the technique of positive visualization.
So the origins and sort of conception of the Shawshank Redemption. Well, like I said, it's from a Stephen King novella, which was a story that was called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. And it first appeared in King's 1982 collection called Different Seasons. Now, this collection included The Body, which came out to be Stand By Me. And it also included the film App Pupil, which Tony loves so much. Absolutely. And that became a film in 1998. And another story called The Breathing Method. Unlike King's more famous horror works, Different Seasons showcase a more reflective, dramatic side, focusing on themes of hope, camaraderie, and childhood and moral conflict. And you can see that throughout those four stories I said. Hope, of course, is the Shawshank Redemption. And then you have the effects of childhood in The Body, also in App Pupil, and moral conflict. So it's pretty cool that he banged out two great stories in The Body and Stand By Me. The Body and Shawshank in one novella. It's crazy.
That is real great.
Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption is a notable for its absence of overt supernatural elements. Again, this is something different from what King was doing. It's relying instead on a realistic prison setting and it's more psychological tension than anything. This is King's usually something has a monster, and even Cujo, even though it wasn't that supernatural, had to do with rabies, it still had a monster. This one is more of a life is basically the monster, doing time is the monster. It's more of a realistic and more of a psychological, thing that you're dealing with in this whole film. He reportedly wrote the story to explore issues such as justice, institutionalization, personal integrity, topics that would later become central of the film's adaptation success. And you can see a lot of Green Mile, concepts, like little seeds of it from writing this story. He probably put that into Green Mile going later. The novella is linked a bit over 100 pages, providing enough narrative structure for a film adaptation, and yet still allow the screenwriters to latitude for expanding it and any secondary characters they wanted with subplots. Frank Darabont, Darabont, if I'm saying that correctly, Tone, you would know.
Darabont, you got him.
Darabont, thank you. An inspiring filmmaker, became known to Stephen King through the Dollar Baby program. Now, this Dollar Baby program is actually a awesome thing that Stephen King does, which allows fledgling directors, meaning new directors who are up and coming, with an option to certain Stephen King short stories for just $1 or a nominal fee. Most of them are $1. If you're an up inspiring film director and you want to do one of King's stories, he'll sell it to you for $1, which I think is awesome. Also, it's like advertising up the ass, because most times when films are made all based off books, usually the book sales go up just for that. So he's smart either way. But I think it's awesome that he allows directors to do this. He's one of the few authors, if any, that I've ever heard do this. Have you heard of anyone doing this, Tom?
No, I have not. I have not heard anything even close to that before. It makes me still. Does he still do this?
Yeah, he still does. It's I think you can go to his website and look at it, I believe. In 1983, Darabont adapted King's The Woman in the Room as a short film. While not widely distributed, it garnered critical attention and impressed King himself with Darabont's sensitivity to his material. So he loved the way he presented his work. So he's kind of getting on King's good side with his adaptation of that. In the late 1980s, Darabont approached King about acquiring rights to adapt Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption. King agreed to let him option the story for $5,000, which is a nominal fee, a modest sum, especially considering his commercial success. So he probably got the first story, A Woman in the Room, for $1, and then after the success of it, King gave his nominal fee of $5,000. The funny thing is, King has never cashed that $5,000 check. Years later, he returned it to Darabont, framed with a note, "In case you ever need bail money." The gesture reflected King's support and belief in Darabont's potential, which I think is awesome. King's willingness to license his story for such a small fee and later returning a check demonstrates the level of creative trust he placed in Darabont. Darabont has often cited King as a mentor figure who encouraged filmmakers to approach his work with their own vision while preserving the essence of the story. And I think that's what he's doing, which I think is awesome. So we had some early script drafts. Darabont began toying with the idea of a feature film live adaptation in the late 80s, like we said, but the bulk of the screenplay was written in the early 1990s. He was inspired to highlight the novella's central themes of hope, human resilience, and friendship. Unusual for a prison drama. I mean, up to this time, you had American Me. It's about the Mexican mafia, and you had the prison, the film with Sean Penn, Bad Boys. That's another prison film. You have Fist with Sylvester Stallone, Lockup.
With Sylvester Stallone too.
Lockup, yeah, with Sylvester Stallone. So you have those prison films, and even you have Blood In, Blood Out, which came out, I believe, in '93. Before this film. So you have those films that are just, they show prison in a different way than this film does. It still doesn't highlight prison as a good place, but it's a different perspective, I think. So when you think about prison, this is changing the way prisons was viewed in films. He introduced more dialogue and deeper backstories for supporting characters like Brooks, Haywood, and Tommy with his script. Novella's tone, a confessional memoir from Red, gave Davenport the idea for using voiceover narration, which became a defining element in the film. And before we even talk about, going forward, this film, I think, put Morgan Freeman on the map in terms of voiceover. Everybody loves Morgan Freeman's voice. This film, I think, blew him up to where he was the guy to go to for a voiceover narration as an actor. He does it in here. He does it in Seven. He does it in $1 Million Baby, which he won an Oscar for. He is just phenomenal in his voiceover. The way he can carry a story, I can listen to him forever. I mean, it was got to the point where Morgan Freeman
score that is it could be moody. There's uplifting pieces. Thomas Newman's signature style. Okay, quiet piano and strings. Okay, the score's introspective moments often feature minimal instrumentation. What? Can you do this 2 times as fast? Institutionalization. No, okay, we're gonna stop right there. All right, delicate piano chords or softly bow cello, which honestly, before doing this show this week, I sat down with my brand new JBL headphones, bass boomers, and I listened to the soundtrack. And honestly, I actually felt very, I felt kind of positive with some of it because of the uplifting swells that occur in some of the music. I mean, obviously, if you've seen the movie, you know that the ultimate goal in this movie is the uplift at the end. So that's what's cool about some of the Downing orchestrations is that you know that the final payoff is this kind of beauty. There are some specific tracks. You got the Shawshank Prison, the Stoic theme. It's a moody, low-registered arrangement, setting the film's tone of quiet endurance. Brooks Was Here, which sounds like an awesome band name. An emotional piece capturing the tragedy of institutionalization. The somber strings match Brooks' heartbreak as he leaves the prison. And then the end titles culminates the film's central musical themes, which I'll bring up later while we go through the film, offering a hopeful catharsis aligned with the final beach reunion. The initial release is in 94. On some extra notes that I have here, when the original length was 53 minutes and 24 seconds. Released on September 20th, 1994, which is epic soundtrack, which was actually coinciding with the film's theatrical run, which is that's how it was. It wasn't like it was a movie that had a song by Snoop Dogg on the soundtrack, so they released it early. No, it was released at the same time as the movie. And as we all know, the movie didn't see immediate commercial success. So I can almost, assure you that the soundtrack too became almost a word of mouth, which similarly began to attract attention for people who, like a good film score from a great movie. Many fans who discovered this on VHS or cable liked the score because, as I stated just a few minutes ago, it's uplifting qualities. It's a favorite among music enthusiasts. I mean, over time, not only do these movies in which we love, like The Godfather, as we mentioned earlier, Shawshank, honestly, I'm going to go as far as Commando. The music in Commando rules. I mean, it is an awesome soundtrack. It's like Caribbean, like drum, like it matches just like in this movie. It does what it is supposed to do. The score was nominated for an Oscar, Best Original Score at the 67th Academy Awards in 95. Which is a huge honor to be nominated. But sadly, I don't know why it lost to Hans Zimmer's The Lion King. I know why. Lion King's a good soundtrack. But again, it was which dominated that year. So it wasn't like it lost to something that it shouldn't have won. Over the years, Thomas Newman states that he feels like this is some of his best work. Honestly, it's great. It also, stands next to other great soundtracks like Star Wars and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Just the blending. Since I've been a kid, even in my heavy metal, I've always been a fan of the quiet, heavy, as opposed to heavy, heavy, heavy. I like the changing of styles, and this is what the soundtrack does. It's got uplift. It's got quieter moments. And honestly, the hallmarks of the Shawshank score are just the awesome strings, the great light percussion, the reflective tone. It's crazy is that his next soundtracks that he has, which before doing research for this, didn't even realize he did the American Beauty soundtrack, which again is one of my favorite movies that has excellent, soundtracks. I mean, excellent a soundtrack. But again, just a really, really good score that helped with the value of the emotional intimacy of the whole entire picture. Generally, again, with most soundtracks, they have songs that are played on modern radio. Because this movie takes place, a long time ago, it's definitely got a soundtrack that is perfect for the time period.
Definitely. So how'd you feel reading those 3 pages of notes there?
I loved it. I'm actually ready to keep going here. Opening sequence. Andy's court. No, I'm just kidding.
It's funny. When you said that, I realized that I've had a highlighted note here that says, "Just use what you want."
Well, what's great is actually I enjoyed that more. That was actually fun. So thank you. Because like what it was like I guess sometimes too, it's like even at work, like it's like a set, like you can look down and see what you're gonna play, but you going off your head. That's what you do. That's why you do it so well. It's not like you're like this. Johnny went to the store went to Johnny. Like you're using it as like a tool to like. I teach my students that like when they're presenting, it's like something you can look off of. And it was actually a lot of awesome information that people out there definitely should enjoy to hear about the soundtrack.
Yeah, for those listening and watching, this is 39 pages of notes. I think this is the most notes I've written for any of our shows. Jesus Christ, God help us. But when I get passionate about writing, it just constantly keeps flowing. I sometimes overdo it, but better to be overly prepared than not prepared at all is what I've always been told. So
I mean, I owe you something, and not only because it took this many notes, but that you got it to me, and probably it was your biggest notes, and this was the earliest notes you've ever sent me, which was like, wow, this was amazing. Because I actually print these out. I like an actual hard copy of these because and honestly too, your formatting is getting amazing too. Like looks the best too. This looks great tonight.
Yeah, don't get used to it.
I know. I know. It was there's some downtime. I know. I'm just giving you your props, my man. Good job.
Thank you, my man. So that is our film development. We went into how the director was chosen, how the story was brought up, the screenplay, who bought into it, who was cast, who was chosen, and who was passed on or who denied. We also had a nice soundtrack breakdown from Tony. Again, this soundtrack of this film, like you can hear certain tones or certain like little notes from this film, and you automatically know it's Shawshank. And I think Freeman's voiceover does great with the overall soundtrack. Just his voiceover plays. Oh, it's kind of like they're meant to be together. It's his voice in the soundtrack. Newman did a great job of blending everything together.
Oh, he did. He really, I mean, Newman does a really good job of
like C. McD says, get some Hank Williams records.
Who, me? I already have 7. Who's he talking to?
He's just saying for the soundtrack, it's kind of funny.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
no, go ahead.
No, I was just
okay. But that is our film development. Let's get into the breakdown.
See the arc? He starts down here. He ends up here. Where's my arc, Paulie?
It's a quote from a movie.
I know. I know it was.
Haywood! And then he sings them for us.
I know. Okay.
So the film opens with Andy Dufresne's trial. Now we see Tim Robbins all dressed up in a suit, and he looks like what Freddie Classy Blassie would say, a pencil head geek. He's very cold and emotionless, and he talks about how his wife was killed. He's getting charged for the murder, and how he was drunk and threw the gun in the river, and they said they drained the river for days and they couldn't find the gun. He eventually gets convicted of killing his wife and her lover. And the judge is kind of an asshole to him, telling he's like one of the most cold-hearted people he's ever seen. He gets, I believe, he gets 20 to life, doesn't he?
Yeah, it
Life is a sentence.
wasn't good.
But the cool thing about this is the shots that are done. They zoom in kind of on Andy's face, and they go back and forth between him and the court. And Robbins does a great job of reflecting how a person who's kind of like a banker, a sophisticated person, would process something like this. And Andy's too smart for his own good, because in real life and in reality, usually the smartest people are kind of like socially awkward. And in the 40s, in those times when it wasn't understood, well, among other things, he kind of was screwed the pooch on this one, man.
Yeah. It's the bad, like, because he's like sitting out in the rain out in front of the house before. It's like one of those bad timing type of situations.
Yeah. And it shows like the scenes of him. It's non-linear what's going on. They're showing going back and forth between, and it's showing what he says happens from his perspective. So we don't know if he's really guilty.
Mm-hmm.
We assume he is, but we don't know. From there, we get Andy coming to the arrival at Shawshank, and this is where most people say it hits home when you first start coming into the yard. And you're getting the cat calls, they're getting pulled in for the actual reformatory at the Ohio State. Red and his boys are looking at the fresh fish, and they're deciding who's going to crack first.
I must admit I didn't think much of Andy the first time I laid eyes on him. Looked like a stiff breeze would blow him over. That was my first impression of the man.
Yeah, he goes, that tall drink of water. Piece of shit. Red picks him to be the one to basically cry out at night. It was a game all the inmates did. They bet cigarettes on it. And he's like, Andy's my fish to pick. My favorite one was when Hayward's like, the short, stubby, fat ass. So he's like, that guy, I'll pick him. But it's showing that you're in prison to pass the time. This is some of the shit that you did to pass the time.
I'm not even supposed to be here.
Yes. Before we get to that point, this many of the cat calls from the yard came from real ex-convicts and extras encouraged to ad-lib. So that's some of the shit you might have heard in prison. But this also shows that it foreshadows a lot, because it's showing that Annie's perspective or perception of him is not always true. So don't judge a book by its cover is probably the best way I can put it. And Red kind of does that at first. He judges him by the way he looks, and it turns out to be wrong. So we then get to them coming up and meeting the warden. And I laugh at this part because there's a scene in the show Suits when one of the characters, Mike's, goes to prison. And Malcolm Joel Warner comes in. And Mike's like, are you the warden? He's like, this isn't Shawshank Redemption. Every inmate doesn't meet the warden. But you meet Warden Norton. And before he goes on to his little preamble, he's looking them over, and then he goes on to talking about how they will learn about God, and he only has these 2 rules of no blasphemy, and you follow all the rules. And he says, you have any questions? And one of the inmates asked, yeah, when do we eat? And this is where we see Captain Hanley come over and say, hit him in the stomach with his nightstick and say, you shit when we say you shit. You eat when we say you eat. You got that, motherfucker? Now stand up. Yeah. But we also get the warden saying one of Tony's favorite lines.
I believe in 2 things: discipline and the Bible. Here you'll receive both. Put your trust in the Lord. Your ass belongs to me. Welcome to Shawshank.
And Gutton does a great delivery on this role, this line. And the reason he did so well, Tom, was because he was studying sermons to perfect Norton's facade, how the way he talked.
He did a good job.
Yeah. And then the Bible references foreshadow Norton's own corruption, which is kind of funny, which I thought was hilarious. They didn't have Andy go through like I guess, the decontamination of the 1940s. They had powder thrown on him. The actors said it was uncomfortable with the powder because it was so damn hot.
Oh gosh.
We also
You
see
could
the high
feel
angle
it.
shots emphasize like prisoners' vulnerability of like everything in the prison. We have him go get hosed down, which I always thought was funny. And then we get to the part on the first night.
The first night's the toughest. No doubt about it.
Upstairs.
They march you in naked as the day you were born. Skin burning and half blind from that delousing shit they throw on you. And when they put you in that cell, when those bars slam home, that's when you know it's for real. Old life blown away in the blink of an eye.
It's his voiceover is so great. And we see them all close the bars, and then Red will say, and that's when the boy is getting on the fish. And Haywood is right next to the fat guy, and he goes, "Hey, fat ass." Basically telling him that he'll introduce some guys that will rape him. And again, the guy starts screaming, "Oh God, I'm not supposed to be here!" And he goes, "It's fat ass by a nose." But it also shows how Hanley is crazy because dude's screaming, "I'm not supposed to be here." Hanley's coming and says, "You better shut up," in his cell. He keeps screaming. Even Haywood tells him, "Hey man, be quiet." Hanley pulls him out, beats him with his nightstick until he be quiet, knocks him out, and then tells him, "Everybody else, if you don't shut up, by God, I'll go to each of your cell and do this." And everybody in the prison becomes quiet. And then he says, "Take the guy to the infirmary."
Oh man.
And we find out that he dies the next day at, I think it's breakfast. And this is where we find, Andy Dufresne finding the maggot in his food, and he gives it to Brooks, who gives it to his bird, which again was looked at by the Humane Society to make sure it was a dead maggot. But we first see the interaction of the characters here, and they kind of again think Andy's an asshole because they're talking about the guy who died, and Andy asks what was his name, and Haywood says, "What's to you?" So you can, again, showing like how Andy is kind of an outcast, between the regular prisoners there because he's new. They show him working in laundry. He gets hit on by these guys called the Sisters. Boggs says, "Hey man, I can help you with things in the shower." It's like, what the fuck? And he sees,
I could be a real friend to you.
yeah. These Boggs look at him, and I love when he first meets Red in the courtyard or the prison courtyard, and Red's throwing the ball. This is a famous 18-hour throwing the ball, and he says, "I see you're a man who get me things." He's asking for a rock hammer. Thing to shape rocks. It's actually the rock shiner, and he tells him what it's for, and he says Boggs has taken a liking to you, and he tells him, "Well, I guess it's I should tell him not homosexual." And he goes, "Neither are they. You gotta be human to be," which shows that they're just institutionalized crazy men. We eventually see him get attacked by the Sisters.
I wish I could tell you that Andy fought the good fight and the sisters let him be. I wish I could tell you that, but prison is no fairy tale world. He never said who did it, but we all knew.
Yeah, and Tim Robbins actually spent time talking to ex-inmates to understand their fear and isolation, especially in earlier incarceration for this leading up to this role. It's crazy. It tells you the brutal parts of prison, and they get them. My favorite part of that, I mean, it's not a great part, but when he grabs whatever he has, the soap or whatever he has that he's using, he goes, "If I throw this in your eyes, you'll go blind." And they didn't give a shit. Yeah, he's like, then Boggs tells him, "Struggle. It's better that way." Red goes on to say that that's how the first couple years of Andy's, run was at Shawshank. He would fight the Sisters, and he would sometimes fight them off, and sometimes he wouldn't. He would show up with new bruises, and they all know who it was. And basically, that's how he lived. It was like a routine. It becomes a routine for them. Then we see Red get his parole hearing. The crazy thing is when they show Red's parole picture, it's actually his son, Alfonso Freeman, plays a younger Red, which I think is kind of cool. He gets denied, and my favorite things when he goes in there, he's like, "No, sir, not a threat to anybody else, sir." All polite, and then they just deny him. And then he tells Haywood, Haywood tells him, "I'm up for my denial in a couple weeks," which cracks me up. Like, oh, I already know. Each hearing reveals Red's involving in a mindset toward hope and institutionalization towards later, as he develops as a character. Then we see that at this time, the prison is actually going into a reform in terms of using inmates for manual labor. And they want to take them on top of a roof, which will be, I believe, a few weeks of hard work tarring a roof. Red, who is the man known to get things, pays off a couple guards and has some of his friends join, including Andy, to go on the roof. And while they're up there tarring the roof, we hear Hanley came into some money because his brother died. And when they ask him, "Oh, we're sorry," he goes, "He was an asshole." But it shows how Hanley is. He was an asshole, but he's gonna get, I believe it's $37,000. And he's the taxer gets to him. If he gets a new car, he's gonna take care of it. But Andy has an important question for him.
Do you trust your wife?
Oh, that's funny. You're gonna look funnier sucking my dick with no teeth.
What I mean is, do you think she'd go behind your back, try to hamstring you?
That's it. Step aside, Mert. This fucker's having himself an accident.
You don't push him off the roof. Because if you do trust her, there's no reason you can't keep that 35,000.
What did you say?
35,000.
35,000.
All of it.
All of it.
Every penny.
And Andy shows his intelligence by telling him that the government allows up to $65,000 loan that you can give to your spouse, tax free. The government can't touch a cent. And he tells him he'll do the paperwork for him if he brings him the papers. All he asks is for beers in exchange for the work done. I believe he says 5 beers each man. For him and his co-workers, and Hanley laughs his ass off, co-workers. And he brings Bohemian beer bought by the hard ass of Shawshank. And I love Morgan Freeman's voiceover narration saying that this could have been one of their roofs they done tarred. They drank like they were free men. And Andy refuses a beer because he says, "I quit drinking." Now, in the beginning of the movie, remember Andy was drunk when he did the supposed murder. So, and it also says that Red goes on to say that some believe that he just did it to make favors with the guards and the inmates. And he goes, "I just think he did it to be human again." Well, it's just crazy. What do you think about that whole scene, Tom?
A great scene. I mean, the final, he's just smiling, and then the way as Morgan says it right there, I think he just did it to be human. It's showing again the strength of this movie because you're getting the feeling that Andy isn't maybe as bad as the record said he was when he came.
Yeah, and we kind of see like Andy's dynamic in the prison is now changing. He gets, a search by the warden who comes to see him, who's kind of testing him to see what he has. He finds his rock shaver, lets it go. He finds a poster of his wall. I forget who it is. It's not Rita Hayworth, it's somebody else. But he tells him he can look past, these atrocities. Basically, trying to test him out, see how he is, because he's hearing about this guy doing financial work for the prison guards. Then we find that Andy is actually given a job as a library's assistant. He goes to meet Brooks Haitlin with Jake, his crow, and he asks him, have you ever had
Rita Hayworth was the first one.
Was she?
She was Rita Hayworth, Marilyn Monroe, and then Raquel Welch.
Raquel Welch, yes, Raquel Welch was the last one. Rita Hayworth was the first one. So we then meet Brooks, who is the prison librarian, the older gentleman. He has a crow named Jake. And Andy asked him, like, have you ever had an assistant? He's like, not since I've been here. Shows, again, that they're doing something differently. And again, they had to have a real bird handler to train the crow to perch on Whitmore's shoulder and respond to cues and stuff like that. Um, you know, he talks about, and he goes on to look at the library and says, "Man, this library, it's got like old ass books." So he goes and asks the warden, "Hey, can we, if I write to the state to fund us for more books, would you mail them?" And he goes, "They'll probably give you nothing, but I'll mail them for you if you give them to me every week." So he starts writing a letter a week to the state to ask them for funding for books. During this time, he's also doing all the guards' taxes, which I think is hilarious. When he's with Brooks, Handling comes in with a guy and says, "Dufresne." And he goes, "That's the guy." And the guy walks over and says he's trying to open up a basically account for his son for college, which Andy handles, and Brooks is his helper. Then he eventually does the taxes for all the guards. While doing this, Andy again is building up a better reputation within the prison tone. He's getting those special privileges, and it kind of changes the way that he's looked at. He's becoming valuable to certain people, and this makes a turnaround in going forward with the sisters. Now, we had said the sisters were always attacking him and trying to do things to him, and he would fight them off. Well, they finally get to him again, and this is where Boggs says your famous line. Tone, go ahead, say it.
"I'm going to open up my fly and I'm going to give you something to swallow. Or you're going to, you're going to,
Yeah.
You're going to,
what I give you.
Yeah, you're going to swallow what I give you to swallow." Class.
And that's when Andy tells him, anything goes around. Yeah, whatever you put in my mouth, I'm biting.
Yeah.
And Boggs basically tells him, "No, wow, I'm gonna stick this in your head," which is a large like ice pick. And he goes, "Yeah, but traumatic entry to the brain can cause the victim to close their mouth, jaw. You have to get it open with a crowbar." And Boggs tells him, "Where do you get this shit?" He's like, "I read. Do you know how to read, you fuck?" And the sisters, instead of raping him, just beat the living shit out of him to the point where he's in the infirmary. And they beat him pretty bad. Boggs gets a month in a hole and comes out. And while he's going to his cell, he turns on his light and he sees Hanley and another guard in there.
Two things never happened again after that. The sisters never laid a finger on Andy again. And Boggs never walked again. They transferred him to a minimum security hospital upstate. To my knowledge, he lived out the rest of his days drinking his food through a straw.
Yeah, and again, Clancy Brown was concerned about playing this character and being typecast, but his role was very, very important because it showed the brutality and like the show, like the corrupt system within jails. And he does a great job, and they beat the shit out of Boggs, man. Like he's like screaming, Tone. He's running for the railway. He's like, they're pulling him away. They actually pulled him back into the cell and kept beating him. And like, I don't know about like, did you kind of feel bad for him at least? I kind of felt a little bad for him. He's getting his ass killed, like destroyed.
Well, I mean, no, I didn't. Because the truth of the matter is I didn't even realize this until you said earlier that when you were like, this was how Andy's first 3 years went. So how many situations did this guy put Andy through that to the point where the problem that I do feel bad about it is it was like one asshole doing it to another asshole. Like I wish Andy was the one beating him and not Clancy Brown, because like if Clancy Brown for the rest of the movie then becomes a nice person, and I'm like, okay, I'm happy with what Clancy did, but Clancy's actually could be labeled worse than
Boggs. But I love the way the scene is shot, where he's walking in and he just turns on his light to see them in there.
Yeah,
that's when they start. Cinematography is awesome. Again, we see Andy comes back. The boys give him a gift from Red for coming back. He's come back from infirmary, and now he's doing banking for the guards. He's handling financial matters for the guards. He's building the prison. They finally get a check from the state after years of writing. They give him, I believe, $200 and tell him to stop writing, please. And then he says, "I'm gonna write him 2 letters a week," which is always funny. for the banking with the prison guards, again, Robbins consulted with real CPAs to accurately represent tax form procedures on camera, which I thought was kind of cool. Norton, again, seeing all this, realizes he can make money to facilitate money laundering and setting up the film's crucial subplot in the film. It's crazy, you know, as he's building the library, it's becoming a project for him. It's like, again, routine, and they want that routine, you know. The location transformation, you know, the production team refurbished a neglected prison room to make it look more like a fully functioning library. And when Andy gets the stuff from the state, he finds these records. And while one of the guards is using the bathroom, he decides to lock the door and they're in the warden's office and play this over the loudspeaker.
Two things never.
Andy?
I have no idea to this day what those two Italian ladies were singing about. Truth is, I don't want to know. Some things are best left unsaid. I like to think they were singing about something so beautiful it can't be expressed in words, and makes your heart ache because of it.
The crazy thing about this scene, it's probably one of the most iconic scenes in the film, is that the cast didn't hear no music when this was filmed. It was added in post. They were told to act as if they were mesmerized. And they did an awesome job of doing it.
You did a great job.
And this pisses off the warden. This is happening because he's making the well, one, he's not listening, and he's making the prisoners happy. Which the warden's like, no, we don't like moral happiness here. We're in prison. So he tells them to open up the door, and when Annie refuses, he just lets Hanley, and then Hanley bangs on the door with his nightclub and says, "Now you're mine." And then he breaks the window, and then you hear the record get scratched off. On your feet. And he goes to the hole for a month, and he claims that it was the easiest time he ever did because he had the music there with him. And they think that he brought the record player down. He's like, no, it was in my brain, which again shows Andy's superior intellect to most. The Hole was filmed in a cramped set inside the prison's basement. Lighting was minimalized to reflect the harsh isolation. For the preparation of the Hole scenes, Tim Robbins stayed in dark rooms to understand the psychological impact of solitary confinement. Tim Robbins is just trying to get this, realism as much as he can for his film.
Yeah, I mean, he gave it all.
So we gotta progress forward, and we see the arrival of Tommy Williams. Tommy Williams is a young inmate that arrives, and he befriends Andy and all the other guys, talking shit to him because he's an old guy. They all liked him. The crazy thing is, Tommy, about his background is expanded upon in this film than it was in King's novel, and I think that's cool that the director did a great job of expanding these minimal characters, and that's why I said that he kept the essence of the original story for this film. And Tommy's a perfect example of this. We find out that Tommy knows of Andy's story because he was actually cellmates with another prisoner at another place when he was like a local prison, jail, and the guy was telling him killed a golf instructor and his broad he was with.
The guy who plays the guy in the jail cell, talking, and he's like, I killed some bitches. The way he talks.
Yeah. No, I killed some guy and the tasty bitch he was with.
Yeah, there we go.
And he goes to tell Andy this, and Andy goes to the warden to tell him about this.
Brain, if you want to indulge this fantasy, that's your business. Don't make it mine. This meeting is over.
Sir, if I were to ever get out, I would never mention what goes on in here. I'd be just as indictable as you for laundering that money.
Don't you ever mention money to me again, you sorry son of a bitch. Not in this office, not anywhere. Get in here now.
I was just trying to set your mind at ease, that's all. Sir, I didn't...
Solitary, a month.
Yes, sir.
Huh? What's the matter with you?
Yeah, gives him a month for solitary. And during the whole time, he's trying to tell him, this guy, he's trying to say, this person is saying that I'm innocent. He's like, well, that person could, the person that's claiming to do this, even if he's there, you think that he's going to go and and say, "Oh, I did this. Just give me a life sentence." He's like, "No, but it'll open up my case for a retrial." He's like, "And what if he's gone?" He goes, "Well, they can track him down." Every time that he's trying to give reasons to, use this information to help him, the Warren turns it down, and then he says, "How are you being obtuse?" And that's when the Warren gets pissed off for no reason because the Warren doesn't want him to get released because he's afraid Andy's gonna roll over on him because Andy's been funneling money out, and he's been, basically he created a whole other identity that is a figment of his imagination that would basically take the rap that he doesn't exist. He has his own, the person that he created has his own driver's license, birth certificate, social security number. The Warren doesn't know this though. He thinks that Andy is putting him on, on the to take the fall, but it's crazy that the Warrior was scared that Andy was going to roll over on him. And I mean, to be honest with you, he's dealing with a criminal, so why wouldn't he think that?
That's true.
But Andy basically is thrown in the hole, and then Tommy is approached by the Warren outside of the prison with a week to go, asking him if he would, testify for Andy, and he says he would, and Hanley shoots him.
That was the scene right there.
Staging as an attempted escape. The scene is shot at night with stark floodlights and emphasizing the cold, callous nature of the act. This shows that the Warden is not a good person. It shows that Hanley's not a good person. He's ruthless. It also kind of kills off a character that had a bond. He was another project for Andy and Tommy. Red talks about how Andy did the library. That was one of his projects. Now Tommy was his second project. And Tommy, showed that there's hope for he's getting out. He wants to just pass the GED exam. He wanted to get a job to help support his future baby coming along, and now he's dead. Which is, but prior to this, Tone, we can't skipped over a little bit. While the library is getting fixed, Brooks is actually freed. And, Brooks is freed before the library is getting fixed, and he tries to actually kill Haywood because he doesn't want to get freed. Because he's scared of being in the real world. He's been outside so long. And, James Whitmore does a great job with his voiceover talking as he writes a letter to the boys saying he never seen a car. He maybe saw once when he was a kid, but they move so fast. He hates working at the supermarket he's at. The manager yells at him all the time. He feels alone in his bedroom, his bedroom apartment. He feels like he's falling. He then talks about, well, what if I rob the convenience store and shoot the manager as a bonus, to go back to Shawshank.
They won't kick up any dust over an old codger like me. Isn't that what he says?
Yeah. And it just shows how when you've been inside so long and adapting to the real world, it's hard. And this is real life going down. I worked in the prison environment for almost 10 years, and I know, although I worked with juveniles, I know I've dealt with older inmates that came in to talk about institutionalization and talking about how it can affect your psyche to try to get the juveniles from going to that, adult transfers. It's a depressing scene, especially when he carves his name in his ceiling, up on a ceiling, and then basically hangs himself, saying Brooks was here. A very, very sad scene. And Whitmore does a great job of portraying him. Like, you feel really, really bad for him. Depressing.
Very depressing. Very sad.
Yeah. And this is going to parallel later when we see Red. But until then, after Tommy gets killed, there's a change in Andy. He tells Red that about this tree him and his wife went to, where he proposed to his wife. They made love there, and it makes a lot to him. And then he talks about a city in Mexico that, Red should ever check out if he leaves. And he should go to this tree if he ever leaves, which is kind of foreshadowing what he's going to do. But Red tells him, you can't be thinking this way, Andy. You hope is not a place where hope is. Hope can kill a man. And Andy keeps telling him, no. just think this. I did my time. I did 20 years. I did my penance for being a bad husband, but I loved my wife. I never hurt her. And going forward, Andy kind of becomes like distraught, and Red begins to worry about him. He begins to think, he's going to do something, even though he gets a poster of Raquel Welch on his, wall. He's still worried about him. And when talking to the other people, Red tells them, I'm worried about Andy. And Haywood says, Andy, come down by the dock and ask for 3-foot length of rope. And Red's like, did you give it to him? He's like, well, yeah, it's Andy. And he goes, why'd you give it to him? Because now Red's scared that Andy's going to hang himself. When we see Andy the night of that day doing the books for the Warren. The Warren thinks he crushed Andy's soul, like having Tommy killed. He tells Andy to polish his shoes and put the books away. He opens up the vault, make sure Andy's not looking at the combination, puts the books away, and tells him he wants his shoes polished and his laundry taken over to laundry. Andy goes back into his room, his cell, and Red's watching him, thinking about, worried about him. He said he barely slept that night because he was scared about what Andy was going to do. And the next day, we see Andy's not in his cell. They think, well, first the worst is thought of. Like, I thought he hung himself when I first saw this film because he's like, oh my God. Oh, when the guy runs over there, oh my God. And Andy isn't in his cell, and the Warren's going nuts.
Brain, if you want to indulge,
he goes going nuts, and
this is a conspiracy. That's what this is. One big damn conspiracy, and everyone's in on it, including her.
Fucking Bridges.
Yeah, he and that's probably one of the most iconic scenes in this film. It's when he throws the rock, it hits Raquel Welch. He looks and sees there's a hole there, and the Warren puts his hand through the hole and tears it down. I know they made a parody on Family Guy with David Cassidy poster. Yeah. And it's like this iconic shot here. It looks awesome of the Warren looking through. He says, I want to frame found, not before breakfast, not before lunch, now. And Andy Dufresne escapes. And how he escaped, he had a rock hammer. They show back how he had a rock hammer that he bought from Red. And Red laughed because he said he didn't want to be used as a weapon or the way to get out. And Andy tells him, when you see the rock hammer, you'll laugh because there's no way I'm getting out. And Red tells him it's going to take you 50 years to dig out. But it took him just under 21. We show Andy trying to carve his name into the wall. He finds out a piece comes out. And then we show him letting out the dirt as he goes to the yard, sprinkle it here and there. And he will work on it at night. Now, this has become a theory. How did Andy have the poster go back perfectly?
What do you mean? Oh, like on the...
He crawled in. Because it was tight. It was tight when he went in there. The way I think Andy had a weight on the bottom of the poster. Because if you look at when he's doing the initial carving, it looks like the poster's kind of heavy at the bottom.
Yeah.
So I guess that's just when he just went, it just slid back and went back and over it. But people always say, like, how did the poster come back perfectly? And it wasn't. I don't think it was perfect. I just think it was just sitting there.
Yeah.
But Andy escaped during a storm. He was basically, every time the thunder came, he would be hitting a pipe after he crawled through that hole, and it was a septic pipe. And he crawled through 4 football fields worth of shit and came out clean on the other side, as Red says. And we had the iconic shot of him in the rain to show freedom, as he has a bar of soap, and he goes in with, we find out he stole the Warden shoes and his suit, and he wears them to the banks because he has all the identity that the Warden and him that he created for the Warden. Now he's going to all the banks the Warden has his money in, and I believe he leaves with over $300,000. They say. And then sends out the dirty records and whatnot to the press. And the Warden sees that.
Hiram Hadley, you have the right to remain silent. If you give up the right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law.
I wasn't there to see it, but I hear Byron Hadley started sobbing like a little girl when they took him away. Norton had no intention of going that quietly.
Yeah, we find out that Norton actually was going to shoot the cops when they came in, but then he decided to take his own life. That's again another great film. Great as you see Norton, as you see Hanley getting arrested below, and you see Warren looking down from the window. And as the cops come out, it always made me laugh when he goes and sits behind his desk and points the gun at the wall at the door, like he's gonna like, which makes no sense. Then he decides to take his own life. During this time, the Warren's gone. Red's getting postcards from Andy, thinking about him traveling. He's showing her he crossed the border, giving Red some hope. And Red begins to talk about Andy and his relationship with him.
Sometimes it makes me sad, though, Andy being gone. I have to remind myself that some birds aren't meant to be caged. Their feathers are just too bright. And when they fly away, the part of you that knows it was a sin to lock them up does rejoice. But still, the place you live in is that much more drab and empty that they're gone.
A beautiful speech right there.
It is. It's a great speech.
And eventually Red gets paroled. And the reason he gets paroled is because when he goes into his parole hearing, he talks about how he would talk to his younger self, how he would talk to him and tell him not to do these things. And the parole board is convinced, they release him. And we see that Red has the same issues that Brooks had, adapting. We see him in the same department as Brooks, which is kind of creepy. We see him at the same job. He's asking the bank manager to use the bathroom. And the bank manager says, you don't have to ask me. I mean, the convenience store manager says, you don't have to ask me to use the restroom. Just showing how institutionalized he is. And Red eventually is thinking about Andy, and you could see him looking at Brooks's name up top. Brooks was here, thinking about, and everybody's thinking, is he going to do the same thing? But no, Red actually carves. Red was here too. Gets on a bus, and he says the famous line, "Get busy living or get busy dying." And he takes a bus to Andy's oak tree he told him about, and there he finds some money in a box under the tree with a note from Andy telling him where to go. And Red says he crosses the border. He's saying that I guess they won't put up any roadblocks for this old criminal. And he just longs to see his friend. And he sees Andy basically, I don't know, he's like cleaning a boat in Mexico. And they embrace. And that's how the film ends. It's crazy, like how I love the parallels between Brooks and Andy here, and Red here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, even you just saying it, honestly, just you just saying that scene. I mean, it always has sent shivers down my spine, tears down my face, because through this whole movie, that's what it was about. That last scene. Like, can you get to that last scene? Can you overtake the warden? Can you overtake the sisters? Can you overtake the whole entire process and believe that you can find yourself in this paradise? And that's where I think it's one of the most beautiful endings in a movie.
Yeah, and it's crazy, like you say that, because that scene was almost removed. Darren Bond originally considered ending with Red on the bus, leaving Andy's beach as an ambiguous off-screen resolution. But test audiences wanted a more definite, resolution to the film. And that's why that was kept in there. Also, when he goes to find the note on the oak tree, that's actually pulled straight from the book. So Darren Bonds actually pulled the material straight from there in that scene, which I thought was kind of cool. Again, adding essence to the film. It's beautiful where they go to, and him hugging him. I wish there could be like an after, like maybe like another book talking about how they lived after.
Yeah.
But, I wouldn't want to move.
I think that's the bus scene. I mean, that's just like the bus. You got to think and imagine, where did it go? Or does he just say, hello, this doesn't work for me and you? See you later.
Yeah. But it's awesome how they come together at the end. It's a powerful film, man. And it's we've been talking about this for 2 hours now. It's one of those films that, even though I can still visualize in my head everything I'm going through in terms of notes and like this way I'm describing it. Hopefully I described it well enough for you guys to understand and
Great
visualize it
job.
yourself as well. But it's a powerful film, the message it gives, that hope is out there, and sometimes people who are wrong do get some redemption in some way or another. And sometimes people who did bad things are, can redeem themselves as well in terms of Red's case. But very, very, very powerful film.
It was a very important film. My mother, who's no longer here, she often spoke of hope, and this movie was like a huge beacon of hope. Get busy living or get busy dying. I mean, there isn't more truer words spoken almost in a film. I mean, it's true.
Yeah. This is just a great, great film. But Tone, let's keep this moving, my man. Let's get into how this was critically received.
Do it.
You know that fat cocksucker says I look like the Shah of Iran?
Who does? Tony. I never got that at all.
Now, before we get into how this was critically received, usually I have a fan theory that usually goes along with this. This is already a long episode, and writing these notes, I do not want to look for a fan theory because it would have been like a 4-hour episode. I know some of you like that, but it's kind of long-winded for me in tone too. So I'm just going to go with the critical reception here for this one. The film opened in the fall of '94, going up against heavyweight titles like Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction, and Quiz Show. It earned strong reviews from many critics, but struggled at the box office, largely overshadowed by these high-profile releases. It garnered 7 Academy Award nominations, winning none. It's one of those films that didn't win any at all, which is kind of like the film that The Killers of Flower Moon just had. I think 8 or 9 nominations, didn't win any. The awards' attention triggered renewed interest in the film, boosting rental sales and word of mouth. Over time, it became a cult following for the film. After underperforming theatrically, Shawshank found its true audience on the home video and frequent TV airings. TNT loved this film. As more viewers discovered it, critics revisited or updated their stances on it, often elevating the film in retrospective. It had a production budget of $25 million and a box office of $28 million, so it did make some money, but I'm pretty sure it lost because of promotion and stuff like that. But the home video sales are said to be at $80 million, and it's still making money to this day. Last time I checked, it made $3 million last year in DVD sales. So, how do the critics look at it? For the positive ones, Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times said Freeman's performance is the film's center of gravity. Ebert underscored the strong emotional bond between Andy and Red, calling it a story about maintaining dignity under the most degrading circumstances. James Berdavelli of Real Views said it was a compelling story, superbly acted prison drama that invests the audience in its characters. He described it as an uplifting meditation on hope and placed it amongst his top films of 1994. Peter Travers of the Rolling Stones said it's a stirring piece of work, easily the best King adaptation ever made. And I actually would agree with that. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, it's right there. It's right there.
Travers commended Thomas Newman's score and the performance of Robbins and Freeman, calling him pitch perfect. Owen Gibberman of Entertainment Weekly initially gave it a B rating on this release, citing it as a slowly engrossing and praising its quietly haunting tone. He emphasized the film's unusually strong moral clarity for a prison drama. Leonard Maltin of Movie Guide called Shawshank a thoughtful and evocative film that awards patient viewing with a truly uplifting conclusion. He praised Morgan Freeman as wonderful and noted the story's methodical pacing. Janet Maslin of the New York Times said she highlighted the film's dignified spirit and singled out Morgan Freeman's portrayal as quietly mesmerizing. Observes Shawshank as a well-crafted allegory of hope and perseverance. I'm sorry. Again, I can't read. Many of these critics lauded Morgan Freeman and Tim Robinson's performances. Frank Darabont's direction for bringing realism to a prison drama, and the film's ending, which left a powerful impression. Now, while majority of the critics were favorable, a minority expressed reservations. Some contemporary critics were less glowing, often citing pacing or other concerns. Todd McCarthy of Variety, his initial review leaned positive but was measured. He praised the acting but noted a tendency to package the story too neatly, suggesting a predictable payoff for viewers familiar with the redemption narratives. I don't agree with that. I don't think it was predictive at all because this was something that hadn't been done before.
Yeah, no, I mean that's stupid to say. It's stupid to say that you knew predictively that he was busting out with that little rock hammer. There's literally nothing predictive about the movie besides because you could say it's predictive, but the whole ending throws the whole whatever you thought it was out the window. It's like 7.
Rita Kempley of the Washington Post. She acknowledged the strong performance, but argued the film doesn't always muster the emotional punch you expect from a prison story. Again,
I guess she was looking for more of what was going on in Lockup.
Yeah. That she said more of the moments veered into melodramatic territory. What other prison movies are these people seeing is what I wanted to know.
Let's go to prison.
I'm gonna say this, they're critics, so everybody, I'm not gonna always agree with critics, and everybody listens to the show's not always gonna agree with me or Tony, or I might not agree with Tony, he might not agree with me, and we've discussed that. But when you say things like this, why? What other, besides the Clint Eastwood film is different?
And I guarantee she's not using that one as the example to put up over this one.
Because Clint Eastwood's character was bad in that movie. He escaped from Alcatraz. He was a bad guy. Anyway, Hal Hinson, the Washington Post, another source of mixed reviews. He emphasized the sincere but deliberate pace could feel overly slow for some audiences. He recognized the film's earns its sentiment, but believes certain scenes might appear contrived to pull heartstrings. Well, yeah, it's a fucking movie, dude. Go ahead, Tom.
No, that's again more to. It's a stupid thing to say. We'll just say that.
Michael Scrungow, the New Yorker, at the time said, although not outright dismissive, he described Shawshank as occasionally preaching to the choir of feel-good humanism.
So what the fuck are you supposed to do here, man?
Yeah. He mentioned that for some, the prison's unrelenting gray can stifle the drama.
No, I love Pulp Fiction as much as everything else, and so you could say that I like movies where people get guns blowing our brains out all over the place. So to say something as stupid as feel good humanism is stupid, considering one guy saying, I'm gonna open up my fly and I'm gonna give you something, you're gonna give you what. I can't mess the line up, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, even though those who had mixed or negative reactions, critics often commended the acting, the score, and the character-driven story. But I can't agree with some of these critics. Maybe I'm just being too harsh. But the immediate versus the long-term consensus of the film is in 1994, prison dramas were not a major draw, and the film's initial marketing struggled, which we explained why. While many critics praised it, some major outlets were not as effusive, potentially impacting box office momentum. Over the years, repeated TV airings, TNT, and word of mouth championed by critics and audiences alike elevated its reputation, which makes the video sales gone very high. Today, it consistently ranks at or near the top of IMDb's, which is the International Movie Database's top 250 user voted list. I believe it's number 2, if I'm not mistaken. I can look that up right now. But it's in frequent features predominantly in critics' best films retrospectives. And I mean, it should be there. It should. It's one of the best films that. It's one of the actually, Tone. As I'm looking right now, IMDb on January 10th, 2025, Shawshank Redemption is rated a 9.3 out of 10 by 3 million people, and it's number 1.
Oh.
Number 2 is The Godfather. 9.2. I'll give you a guess. What's number 3?
I really want to say Borderlands, but I know that that's not going to be number 3. No, I don't know. What is it?
Number 3 is The Dark Knight at 9.0.
Oh, God.
The Godfather 2 at 9.0. Dark Knight has 3 million votes. The Godfather 2 has 1.4. 12 Angry Men, the 1957 version, has 905,000 view points for 9s. Your favorite film, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, has 9 at number 6 with 2 million. Schindler's List is number 7 at 9 with 9.0 and 1.5 million. Pulp Fiction at number 8 with 2.3 million votes at an 8.9 rating. Another one of your great films, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, 8.9 at 2.1 for number 9. And rounding out the top 10, The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly with an 8.8 and 839,000 votes for number 10. Lord of the Rings has 2 on there. And The Godfather has 2. Big Trouble in Little China should be number 2. But again, numerous modern critics revisit the film and describe it as an enduring masterpiece, which why shouldn't they think that? And I think it aged gracefully, which I think it's still a great movie even today. I think it holds up because it's a period piece and it still holds up in today's perspective. It's a film that's rewarding. It's a film that has great acting in it. I would consider it a late bloomer too. It's a film that kind of had to go over again with the word of mouth. And that's kind of something that my favorite film, Big Trouble in Little China, had to go through word of mouth. It wasn't all films can't be an Unforgiven.
That's true.
They have to be, discovered, and this is one of those films discovered, that turned out to be great. For the cultural impact, it's always in the best films list, like we said. Its quotations and memes are used a lot, like "get busy living" or "get busy dying." They say that in Suits. The town of Mexico was a metaphor for hope and escape, appear in everything from social media posts and travel articles. You had the tourism of the sites, the fans going there for like a pilgrimage from basically the prison to the oak tree. It talks about life lessons. Educators and life coaches use Shawshank as a case study on themes of hope, perseverance, and moral integrity. Clips regularly appear in lectures and leadership and ethics and human behavior. The prison library subplot has become example discussions about the rehabilitative potential of education, sparking dialogue on penal reform in some circles. And I would say that prisons are looking more into more educational programs, more like resources for inmates if they have the funds provided. Numerous TV shows from The Simpsons to Family Guy have spoofed the film's iconic scenes, particularly Annie's escape and the rooftop beer moment. The Morgan Freeman voiceover has become shorthand in popular culture for reflective or profound narration, often credited to Shawshank's memorable story style. Again, this made him the man for voiceover. Again, in the film is a symbol of hope and redemption. So, Tone, that is our view of the critics, the symbolism of the film, and its cultural impact, my man. Any final thoughts?
Great all-around movie. Tim Robbins, excellent performance. He's got a lot of actually good performances. Cadillac Man, if you've never seen that with Robin Williams, he's really good in that. He's an excellent actor, and this is just and of course Morgan Freeman. I mean, we could spend 17 episodes in a row just talking about Morgan Freeman's awesomeness. So the acting in this movie, Frank Darabont does a great job. Earlier, if you were looking online, he wore a Sox jacket while he was filming a lot of this film. So he is a Sox fan. Really just a good all-around picture, man. I mean, great all-around picture. It's cool that we did Godfather, which is number 2 to start last year. And this year we started with Shawshank, number 1 on people's, highly rated list.
Yeah, it's crazy. We went 1 and 2 for our season debuts.
Just by coincidence.
Yeah, by coincidence. I was watching Shawshank, and I'm like, man, maybe we should do a deep dive in this. This is a more lengthier deep dive than we usually do. One of my favorite films, a lot of people's favorite films. I know I threw a lot of information at you. I will drop the notes in our post on our website, which is 39 pages of notes. So if you want to read through it and check out that stuff in there, please do. I drop in there for you guys to show, not just the work that we do, but I'm a note nerd. I go through IMDb trivia all the time, and I use websites for other stuff for the notes, just to get information I pulled into a big document that me and Tone go through as our kind of our playlist or set list, for each show.
It's excellent. It really is a good guide, and even if you're listening along, and you could it's cool, to kind of read along with it and listen. I have a couple buddies who listen to the show, and that's what they like to do. So try it out.
Yeah, cool. So Tone, that is our film for Shawshank. Let's just go through our next segments, my man. Let's go into what's coming soon.
Let's do it.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Coming soon.
Próximamente.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
So what's coming next, my man?
So this week we've been talking about doing a something a little bit smaller during the week. Something that a little let's see. So it's going to be a mini show, like about 30 minutes, where we kind of talk about maybe some entertainment news coming up. Like today, I just heard, I don't even know if my awesome partners heard yet. Christopher Moltisanti has come out in the press and says that he has an excellent idea. And by Christopher Moltisanti, I mean Michael Imperioli, has come out in the press today and says that he actually has an excellent idea for a spin-off continuation of The Sopranos with Christopher and everything else. I don't know how you feel about that or even how I feel about that, but that's the kind of topics that we may be talking about coming up on this show. Is this something that could happen? Is it something that's exciting? Different little things like that to kind of go against some of the other stuff that we're doing, like the Amazing Shawshank episode tonight. How's that sound? Yep.
Sounds good, man. And just a reminder, this isn't going to replace our show next Friday. We're still going to do a live show next Friday. This is just the at the mini show, which is something that we want to get off and running. We've both been busy, but this is like an extra content that we will. It's not going to probably be live. It'll probably be recorded. So you can watch the video of it, and we'll also post it to our podcast. So it'll be an extra 30 minutes of film. Mostly news and media stuff. Just us trying something new and let us know what you'll feel about it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I already got some topics that I want to discuss that's been building up for a couple weeks. So it'll be like a short little version of us just talking about, just some news, some movie news. It's always good to go recent with what's going on in the world of entertainment. Then go back and look at the older films like we do now.
Yes,
so looking forward to it, man.
Could be good.
Mm-hmm. And before we get to the Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week, just want to say thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We really, really appreciate your support. We are on season 5. I know we haven't reached 100 episodes yet, but due to we were used to be a every 2-week show. Now, for the past 2 seasons, we've done 2 years actually. We've done once a week, and I think we did 41 episodes last season. Oh?
Exactly 40.
Exactly 40. Awesome. So let's shoot to go above that this time. We're gonna hit past that 100 mark, and maybe even hit the. No, I don't think we could hit 150, but we'll hit. We'll get close to it. Excuse me. We'll get close to it. But really been an awesome, Tone. You've basically done more shows with me than when the show started. So we're already progressed. So you're a veteran now of the show.
It has been a blast, my friend. It's a blast. Honestly, You got a great voice for this. So like hearing you even explain the movies, I put myself in a position that if I wasn't like I was before, I listened to you. And if I wasn't on the show now, hearing you break things down, it does it in such a smooth way. And we got such a smooth repertoire. I'm excited to see the rest of the season, what comes up.
Yes, I'm very excited. This is my outlet, is your outlet. So we hope everybody enjoys it. And if you do, thank you so much for listening. So enough of me rambling. I just wanted to get that in there because it is our first show this season. And we can go to Tony's because everybody's been waiting for this, Tony. You pick up the week.
The Sugar Baggies soundtrack pick of the week.
So you brought up Mr. Tom Cruise earlier. Let's get into a Tom Cruise movie soundtrack today. Mission Impossible 2, kind of a new metal soundtrack. Came out May 9th, 2000, which is crazy because it's like literally 11 days before I graduate from high school. And this soundtrack actually has a lot more importance that you may think. That song you just heard right there, that is I Disappear by Metallica. Now you may say to yourself, that is probably my least favorite Metallica song, and I am a huge Metallica song fan, but this is the song that kicked off the whole entire Metallica versus Napster experience, because this song was released way before the soundtrack came out, and this is what started them getting pissed off, and a lot of people getting pissed off about songs being released before. But when you go through the soundtrack, you got other great tracks, I think, by Limp Bizkit, Take a Look Around, Scum of the Earth by Rob Zombie, and amazing Foo Fighters and Brian May of Queen doing Have a Cigar, Chris Cornell doing Mission 2000. I mean, pretty much loaded with bands like Godsmack, Buck Cherry. Stay away from Uncle Kracker at all times, because you want to stay away from Uncle Kracker because Kid Rock produces this track on it, and you want to go nowhere near Kid Rock or Uncle Kracker ever. I'm sorry, that's just my opinion. But you can go very near Tori Amos on track 15 in Carnival because she's awesome, and just a good soundtrack for the time period. Like, it hasn't aged greatly, but like Scum of the Earth by Rob Zombie, not a bad song. It's also on the Sinister Urge. That's also something I always had a problem with. I'll ask you about this because I've never actually brought this up before on the show. How do you feel about a song like Limp Bizkit's Take a Look Around? How do you feel like when a song is on a soundtrack and then the song is also on like their album too? Do you think it takes away from the soundtrack because was it made for the soundtrack, or do you like, or it doesn't really bother you that it's on both?
To be honest, it doesn't really bother me because a lot of films, they don't have exclusive exclusive tracks to this film. Some of the songs can be put on, that were on somebody's album and thrown on.
Yeah.
And that's why it doesn't bother me as much. I actually really like this, the Take a Look Around by Limp Bizkit. It gives me like a lot of the, it has the riff from Mission Impossible. And I think even Fred Durst, he's kind of getting like a revival now.
Yeah.
Back then he was hating on for his musical style. I actually like this one. I actually really like I Disappear by Metallica. I know you might not like it, but the reason this film, I remember watching this film. I remember getting this album. So this was one of the first albums I bought from the Crow's Nest downtown on Jackson. It doesn't exist anymore. I used to work. I had an internship at DePaul with Gateway Computers, which is another company that doesn't exist anymore. Through a thing called Inroads, and they took a lot of minority students, and we did like computer science stuff for Gateway. And I remember walking into the Crow's Nest because it was this hot. It was like a coconuts back then. If you're from the Chicago area,
I used to have a magazine and always had the Crow's Nest inserts in it.
And I saw this album. It was in June 2000, so it was like after my freshman year. I walked in and I saw this, and I bought it and I listened to the whole album. I really love, I'm not really a huge Metallica fan. I like some of their songs.
See, that's it right there.
Mm.
Not being a huge Metallica fan, the song works perfect for that. For me at the time, I'm like, Metallica. So like I Disappear comes across as more of like scar tissue than it does, something funky that the Chili Peppers do. So you're immediately like, oh, okay, well, this song. But I see your point, definitely.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about this album is Metallica. I think this is the album too that made Metallica. People claim they became corporate because Metallica didn't do soundtracks, and Tom Cruise basically begged them to come on, and they shot the video. Tom Cruise is actually in the music video.
Yeah, yeah.
But
there's a bad James Hetfield stunt double in the video too.
Oh yeah, and Lars running through the damn window.
Oh yeah.
But which made no sense because if he jumped through the window, the thing's still gonna get him. But Butthole Surfers is on here. I really like Shame of Life from Butthole Surfers. That's one of my favorite songs from them. But Mission 2000, this is kind of like a techno version of it with Chris Cornell. I actually like the original version. Have you heard the original version of it?
No, I have not.
It's like a acoustic with him. Really, really good. For wrestling fans, the Uncle Kracker song that Tony told you to stay away from, it used to be X Factor's entrance music. Is X-Pac and Justin Incredible, which is kind of funny because they were actually told, X-Pac was told by Shane McMahon, hey, we're thinking about getting the Red Hot Chili Peppers to do your theme song. This was a time where like Ice-T did the Godfather's theme song, Disturbed did Stone Cold's theme song, Motorhead did Triple H's theme song. And X-Pac in his infinite wisdom said, nah, fuck that. I want Uncle Kracker. Well, he got
now as I think about him sitting on Raw on Monday in the crowd sitting there, if I was sitting behind him, I'd be like, what the fuck were you doing, man? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But I love this album. I don't have it anymore. I believe it was scratched because I listened to it so damn much.
I know what I need to get you on vinyl.
Yeah. But I love this album. It's one of my favorite albums. Like I said, it was one of the first ones I bought from Crow's Nest. I like the movie was subpar from the original, but the remake of the original. But I really like this album. And I'm a Rob Zombie fan, but I'm just not a Metallica fan.
Well, we'll talk about that at a later date. Thank you very much for joining me for Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah, if you haven't heard this album, check it out on Spotify. Buy it in vinyl. Buy vinyl. Mailman Jack can put a stamp of approval on that.
Do it.
Great album.
Thank you.
I'm glad you picked this one because I'm like, oh man, when I saw you pick the Metallica, I'm like, oh.
Well, I was thinking of what can I kick off this, and then all of a sudden it just came in my head. Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah, check it out. But that's our show. Thank you again for watching. Tone, any closing remarks, my man?
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Make sure tomorrow the Hookup on Music will be dropping. Just finished it up right before we got on here. So I'm going to cut it up, chop it up, drop it. Some really awesome conversation. Talked about everything from the band Mudhoney, a really awesome band from Seattle, and also brought up Chris Cornell because there was connections there. Just a lot of insight, a lot of different things. Yump has inspired me. Trivia. We got a lot of different stuff. Intros. Check it out. It's going to be it's a really good show. So
yeah, I'm looking at some of the videos you have here. I'm like, oh, he's got like little segments. I like this.
That's what it is. And it's like with our show here. I always want every year to just get a little, even if it's something different, a little bit better, a little bit stronger. I mean, this is our longest show. And honestly, it hasn't felt like 2 hours and 40 minutes. And honestly, that's why I love this show, Yum, because I've been in part of operations before that went on for 3 hours. And by the end of it, I was screaming at Katie going, I can't believe I sat there. When tonight, this was, as you just said, our amazing therapy that we have together to talk about movies, music, and everything else. So thank you.
No, thank you, my friend. Also, be sure to check out the Drafty Pod. They just released an episode about wrestlers who did not win the World Heavyweight Championship in major companies. He had the Chicago Sports Bums members, Joey P, mi hermano, and you had Dougie Fresh on there, along with a friend of the show, Shankster, and a regular drafty participant to join Magnificent Stand. That's up. I checked that one out live. Check it out. I'm definitely going to check out the Hookup on Music tomorrow. If you're listening to this via YouTube or watching us through YouTube, be sure to check, give us a like and a subscribe if you can. We appreciate that. We just passed 700 subscribers. We usually don't ask for it, but it's kind of cool if we get it. But thanks again for listening, and we will be back next week with the mini show and then the regular show. So be on the lookout for those, and have a good night, y'all.
Good night.
Thanks for listening to the At the Show podcast, a Sadistic Penguin Studios production.
Game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Maybe we could build a fire, sing a couple of songs, huh? Why don't we try that?